to BizTech's Aha, the coaching show. The show is all about coaching. Now, today we explore the significance of leadership coaching in today's rapidly evolving landscape. Now, the strategies to dismantle any lingering stigma surrounding it, and the essential qualities that contribute to effective leadership, particularly with the role of the CEO. Now, to give us insights, we've got a guest with a colorful history and a guest who wears many hats. Now, Philip Levinson is a Peoplemax coach and the author of 3 Peaks Leadership, How to Make It as a CEO and Beyond. Now, Phil has had many senior leadership roles across Asia Pacific, including 5 years as the CEO of 2 Singapore Stock Exchange listed entities. He has used lessons learned from a successful business career, coupled with over 20 years of service in the Australian Navy, to refine his leadership skills and ensure that they are practical and appropriate to today's business environment and easily communicated. And those are key things to watch out for. Now, to tell us more, Lev, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, Brian.
Now, Lev, for a start, could you give us an overview of yourself and your journey into coaching?
Yes, certainly. I took the traditional route into coaching, I think, in that I started with a career in finance and real estate, and developed that into CEO roles along the way. Once CEO roles, as you know, have in the main a finite existence, and once I had reached the end of that particular chapter, I was given 2 choices: disappear off into oblivion, or make a contribution to give something back. And the something back has been taking the experiences and, in the main, mistakes that I've made in the past, cataloging them, and providing some mitigants, and then sharing that story with people like yourself and your viewers, and also readers, as you very kindly pointed out, readers of my book, and coachees. So I do some leadership coaching, as you say, with Peoplemax, where I do one-on-one coaching with either aspiring CEOs or those in the role, or those looking for the next step after that role.
Now, you have a very interesting history. And one of the things I want to zoom in on is the fact that you joined the Australian Navy at age 36. Not at 18, which is what a lot of people do, but at 36.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, and how did that shape you as a leader?
Well, it's very interesting. Up until that point, I didn't think I had any leadership, particular leadership skills. Everything I had learned, I learned by observation. There was no formal leadership training, and I think that's a whole subject in itself. And I was definitely ill-prepared to achieve a goal that I'd set myself, which was ultimately to be the CEO of large and public companies, because I wanted to make a difference and I wanted to make a contribution. So I looked around, and I was very fortunate to be offered the opportunity to serve in the Royal Australian Navy as a reserve officer, and went through the officer training, leadership training. But it's also important to note that leadership is about fellowship. And one of the things that they teach you in the Navy is to be a follower. You have to take charge of those that look up to you, whilst you look up to your superiors at the same time. And given that it's a pyramidic structure, there's always somebody above you. So you are both a leader and a follower.
Now, how did that then impact you running the 2 Singapore Stock Exchange listed companies, and they were REITs in particular? Tell us about how you brought some of the learnings there into that role, and how you then, running your first public listed companies, changed and adapted in order to grow into those roles.
That's a great question. I think in the first instance, one of the things they do teach you in the Navy or in military leadership is to take charge. You need to stand up and take charge. You need to take accountability. You need to take responsibility. You need to give your team what they need, not necessarily what they want. And you need to be consistent. I remember, very early on in my Navy training, the executive officer of our training facility walked in. No one liked her. She was tough. She didn't hold herself out to be anybody's friend. And she walked in and she said words to the equivalent of, "I know you all don't like me. And you know what? I don't care because I'm consistent. And you need to be consistent in your leadership." And that lecture, of many, many lectures that we received, was the one that stuck in my mind the most, because she was absolutely right. You can't play favorites. You can't come in one day as everybody's friend and the next day as an authoritarian. You have to pick a path, you have to pick a course and follow it. And then everybody knows how to interact with you and how you will interact and react in certain situations.
Now, then, taking those two broad experiences, I mean, really, those are the fundamental things that shaped your leadership style. How has that then impacted how you coach your coaches?
Yeah, so it's a great privilege to be able to coach people because they've opened themselves up to improving themselves. A lot of people get to a senior level in organizations and think, I must be pretty good. I've got here, and there are many books written on the subject of now what. I've got here, and now what? And I found that myself. I got to the position, I sat at my big desk, and I think I had 30 seconds of self-congratulation. And then the real world hit me between the eyes, and we started with the job. And you need to be prepared for that. And you need to be prepared for after the now what goes after this? How do you appear to an organization? One of the most valuable lessons, Brian, that I learned is that you're always on. Everybody is looking to you for a clue as to how they should behave, whether you know it or not. So I walked into the office one day in a particularly bad mood and couldn't believe by the end of the day how everybody was in a bad mood. And I went to my leadership coach and I said, "Oh, I had the worst day yesterday. I walked into the office in a bad mood. This has happened before I got to the office." And they wouldn't believe it, but everybody, the whole day was just bad. And they said, "And why do you think that is?" So that's a very valuable lesson. You need to be prepared for that. And, developing a leadership base is also incredibly important. Looking for support. Leadership is an incredibly lonely role. It's one of the most rewarding things you can possibly do, but it's also very lonely. And you need to be able to look for support and assistance and guidance whilst you're in that role. And you need to be constantly learning, which comes back to the coaching. I learned through trial and error in the main until I found myself a leadership coach and never looked back.
And so Lev, here's the thing, especially in Asia, a lot of and coaching has become more and more common among leadership, but it's not across the region as such. I always like to use the example of, and this gives away my age, obviously, how even Jack Welch in his heyday, when he was running GE, he had a coach.
Yeah.
And that was something that was not common at all in Asia. But things have changed. You've been in Asia for a long time. You were based out of Singapore for many, many years. Tell us about your observations in terms of how coaching and leadership coaching has changed over the last decade.
I think there's been some great leaders who have been thought not only leaders of their organization, but thought leaders. And one of the things that seems to set them apart is their willingness to be coached, their willingness to continue to learn, the willingness to accept that you're not actually the oracle and the knower of all things, that there are people who you can draw from, who will assist you in your role. And the day you stop learning is the day that your decline commences. So if I can give you a very quick analogy, I fly helicopters. I'm a charter pilot, and there's days when we have six sets of passengers, and on the third or fourth flight, you're doing it all day. The level of anxiety or fear, because it's a potentially dangerous activity and you're responsible for lives, it dissipates. And it's at that point that you need to actually pull yourself up short and say, are you scared? Because if you're not, you need to be. And you need to take a deep breath and you need to start getting back into the zone. Otherwise, something will happen. And it's the same in leadership coaching. Are you learning? Because if you're not, then you're outside the zone.
Now, could you share a little bit then, Lev, about your book and 3 Peaks of Leadership, how to make it as a CEO and beyond? What are some of the things that you bring out there that we should be looking out for?
Thank you. I'll show you the logo because it has 3 peaks. What do the 3 peaks signify? The 3 peaks signify the day one of your career as a CEO or a leader. You've got there, you've done everything, you've spent your entire life getting to this point, and you've got there. Congratulations. And right in front of you, there are all the issues that are going to turn you upside down. There's staff issues, there's the market's reaction to your appointment. There are the things that you thought you knew before you joined the organization, and you've suddenly found out that that wasn't the case. There are all these things that are lined up against you, and they'll be there for the first 3 to 6 months. It's how you deal with them that sets the tone for the rest of your appointment. After you've got through the first peak, in front of you is the second. What's the second? The second is doing your job. The second, if you like, is the first 6 months to a year to the 3 to 5 year mark. But it's also the time that you establish yourself in your marketplace, within society. I think leaders of organizations have a compact with society to do the right thing by not only their workers, their team members, their shareholders, their board, but society at large. So you need to be out there in that second peak, making sure that you're being effective and moving on to the third peak. What's the third peak? The third peak is the future of your industry. So, for example, in real estate, did retailers see the growth of online shopping and e-commerce? No. Why was that? Because they were head down in the second peak and not looking out. It's the job of the leader not only to lead the organization, but to lead the strategy and to be able to be out as a forward scout, looking at what are the industry trends. What is this e-commerce thing and how's it going to affect my business? But it's also the time that you put in place your succession plan. And it was a deliberate ploy in the title, how to make it as a CEO and beyond, because one of the most confronting aspects of being a CEO is the day after you're not. The day after you've been defenestrated, and you wake up. Yesterday you had 1,000 emails and everybody wanted you. Today there's nothing. How do you deal with that? And it's very difficult if you're not prepared for it.
Now, Lev, what are your, and let me rephrase this question then. Who are the leaders that you see in the Asia Pacific region that perhaps you admire as leaders and really fulfill those 3 peaks?
I think it's dangerous to name names because today they might be on the front cover of Forbes, and tomorrow they might be being on the front cover of the newspaper for the wrong reasons. But there are a number of inspirational leaders around the Asia Pacific region who are easy to identify because they are the setters of the tone and the champions of culture. And you'll see them because you don't see them. Their name isn't always in the newspaper. their organizations are doing what they said they would do. And it depends which industry you're in, but there are those who you aspire to emulate and those who you use as an example of doing things a bit differently.
Now, looking ahead across the APAC region, this is 2024 now. What are key things that you would like to share with the leaders who are watching this in terms of key trends and insights that they should be watching out for?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned in business is no one knows. Who knows what's next? You can have a plan, and as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. There are geopolitical events that have taken place in the last 2 years that no one would have foreseen or forecast, and their impact is yet to be determined. So I think one of the greatest learnings, if I may, to pass on is be prepared, practice, assume worst case scenarios, practice for those worst case scenarios so that your organization is not completely blindsided when something happens. But accept that you're not going to have all the answers. Put around you, and I was very fortunate, I was given this advice early on in my career, I formed a board of Lev. Who's the board of Lev? They are great people who have my interests at heart, who have insights into various parts of the geopolitical sphere, the business community, society as a whole, impact investing. They all have their views. They're a safe place for me to go. I have an idea. I call members of the board, and I say, I've had an idea, and they go, have you thought about this or that or the other thing? Or are you crazy? Or is this the right time? Or do you have the capacity to do it? Do you have the bandwidth to do it? All these questions that you haven't asked of yourself, they ask of you. So what I would say to leaders is, it's a very lonely position, as I said. It's a very rewarding position. But in order to be most effective, maintain your intellectual curiosity and put around you a group of people who have your interests at heart. They're not necessarily family and friends. They are people who you admire. They are business leaders who've been through the same industry as you and have thoughts of their own. And as I said, they have other insights into various other aspects that will impact you as a leader.
Now, Lev, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show. Now, we've been speaking to Philip Levinson. He's the Peoplemax coach and author of 3 Peaks Leadership. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to BizTech's Aha, the coaching show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
Thank you.